We'll do roll call and we'll get started. Say your first name, please say your full name and that you're here. Gert?
Gert Lubitz here.
Carolyn?
Carolyn Coffey here.
Mark?
Mark Cameron here.
Phil Lear here. Okay, we're starting Town Hall Building Committee meeting May 9th, 2002. And it's just about 10 after 6 p.m. John, you have the floor.
Okay, good evening, guys. So just a couple things. So congrats on the vote the other night. Coming out of that, we were able to contact Town Council. Town Council already signed the certification that I need for the application. The only thing that came up is that the select board basically recommended the motion, but they felt that the Town Council felt that the language, they should have recommended CM at risk in their minutes. So even though the town already voted yes, they suggested that tomorrow at the select board meeting, they have language for a new vote to say, just for the record, to say that the select board did in fact, obviously town meeting acknowledged that they supported it, but kind of for a belts and suspenders, they're going to go back and get that vote tomorrow.
Do we need to be there, John?
Nope. It's just basically because they already supported it once, Phil, and it's really just about getting the letter of the letter of the motion down to a point so that we have it for the record in case the state ever asked.
Sounds like a formality.
Yes, 100%. So all we need to do as the committee is to approve the CM plans and procedures. It's one of the things that is asked for in the document, in the application, and those plans and procedures were sent to you, or sent to you by Michelle and or me. I forget at this point. And basically, all that is essentially a restatement of how we go about picking a CM, and then after we have a CM, how we go about kind of administering that process until we get to a GMP, a guaranteed maximum price. So I don't know if any of you have had a chance to look through it. It's the same thing. It's basically pretty much the same plans and procedures I've used on the other submissions I've made for this. And it's basically, as I said, really just a restatement of 149A. Did anybody did everyone have a chance to go through it? And if not, I can just kind of give you the really 30,000 foot level of what it is.
I did not.
I did look through it. It looks like it's very regimented.
Yes.
If you want to go over, the high level, just
yeah, sure. So, yeah, no, absolutely. So basically, it's basically a written plan that acknowledges essentially Chapter 149A, and it says that you're going to go and select a CM through a qualifications-based process. After the qualifications piece of it, there is a pricing piece, and a proposal part, and then from there, once you have chosen your CM, it talks about, when you have to then go ahead and build the GMP, basically bid the project. And we basically will go ahead and pre-qualify the trade contractors. Again, those are the same subcontractors that you would use in a design bid build contract and call them filed subbidders. But because it's CM at risk, the state thought it would be a good idea to confuse people and give them their own name. So we go ahead and we'll need a pre-qualification committee for that. And basically we'll need, one or two of you from the group to do it. But, the reality is the heavy lifting for that will be done by us and the CM and some work by Johnson Roberts as well. And we will report back to you. And basically that's a process by which if there's been a subcontractor that any of us have worked with or the town has worked with, that feedback gets taken into account when we talk about which of these sub-trades we will pre-qualify. Obviously, it's best for Cohasset to pre-qualify as many of the firms that submit, but if there's someone in there that's problematic, we'll make sure that we weed them out because the bids only come in from those that pool of pre-qualified subs. Then there's the non-trade contractors, okay, basically all the other subs. And that's really the spirit of the open book part of this too, because, we'll get to participate in the process of buyout or in scope reviews to make sure that, all of the different non-trade contractors, whether it's drywall or big one is site work. Site work is the one that if we were doing this by GC, you never get to see behind the curtain. And it's really good to see what they're carrying, what they're not carrying. And the CM really does a detailed buyout to make sure that, when they get these bids in, they're really comparing an apple to an apple to an apple, when they're trying to evaluate bids. And they bring us their recommendation of the best value. And from there, we then, all of those recommendations, whether trade or non-trade, will come to you to kind of ratify, and that builds up the GMP. So basically, your CM will start with a very small contract to do an estimate, and then we'll move into pre-construction services. Then after a successful town meeting vote and ballot for the project, we'll give them a series of amendments to build them up to the GMP. And then from there, that essentially is the same thing as their lump sum bid if we were doing a design bid build job. So anything from there, we don't call them amendments anymore. We'll call them change orders if we have them. So anyway, that's kind of the process in a nutshell. Also in that document is a draft of a project management plan that is just still very early, but we like to include it to show them that we're thinking about invoicing and who gets them and authorization levels for change orders. And that's why I label that draft. It's really not part of what they want to see, but it's more content to let them know, hey, we're on top of this, and it's something we're familiar with. So I've now spoken for 5 minutes straight. Any comments or questions on those plans and procedures?
I have a question. So do I understand then that when we go to town meeting in the fall, that we will be operating on the CM's estimate, and that we go through the bidding process to get the guaranteed price after that?
So Carolyn, that is an excellent question. In a perfect world, we could get this all together fast and try to bid it and go to town meeting with that GMP. Mm-hmm. Worst case, we're going to go to town with the CM's estimate, which will also have been estimated by the designer, and we will have had a chance to reconcile it. So we're going to do that estimate step regardless. In a perfect world, though, if timing was to work out perfectly for us, if we could squeeze the bid in, and again, I use the word squeeze because there is a lot of time, that a lot of things we have to do, but if we could do it, and we could do it without making it unattractive so that people bid it with premium, you don't want somebody to you don't want trades to give you numbers and just throw numbers at it because this is a short duration bid, put an extra $100,000. No, we don't need that. We want, the goal of this is to give you as much info as we can. So I would say your question, yes, that's the plan. But if we can do better, we're going to try. And doing better would mean getting actual bids in hand. But we'll see what we can do. And it depends, it depends on how quickly the state approves this, how quickly we can get through approval and contracting and get the CM actually on board.
John, I saw somewhere in here that it mentioned low bids. Do we have to take the low bidders on all these?
Yeah, so it's a great question. For trade contract, but essentially, Phil, the short answer is yes. The short answer is yes, especially with the trade contractors. With the non-trades, that becomes the question of the comparison of comparing the low bids. But the other thing that you have with the non-trade guys is the ability to negotiate and say, okay, site work contractors, we've been through this. We've all scoped this out. It's Wednesday. You've got until Friday to give me your best and final. So you have the ability to kind of pit them against each other again, but only on the non-trade side. And if everybody's been pre-qualified, there's no reason to not take the low numbers.
Okay, I didn't know if that was a concern.
What about on something like window manufacturing, which, where you might be as concerned about, more concerned about the quality of the job rather than the price of the job?
So windows are interesting, Carolyn, if we're going to do, so basically if it's metal windows by some chance, and again, I would have to look back and see in the specs, but if we were doing metal windows, which I don't believe we are, metal windows are a trade contract, and basically whatever's in the specs, they own, they bid, and you basically take the low. If it's wood windows is a little bit different. Wood windows, it would be a non-trade, and there would be some room to kind of look at that. But again, remember, for whatever trade is bidding this, Johnson Roberts has put together a spec with certain performance levels in it. So you're not going to get, cheap window company windows, because that's your guard against that is the specifications. So they'll basically base the design on a specific model number, but you have to allow for equals.
I was thinking more in terms of the rebuilding of the old town hall windows.
So for the rebuilding, yeah, different. So if it's not a window and it's more a carpentry thing, what we would, that goes into the pre-qual piece of this. And frankly, what I would do is I would say, when we talk to the CM and we ask for their qualifications package, we make that, and again, this qualifications package will be something I will share with you before we author it or before we put it out there. But the idea is to have that done by the time the Inspector General says, okay, Cohasset, we've given you the green, because I'm going to want to put that out right away. And because a portion of this job is a historical renovation, we are going to want to hear about their experience with that and the trades and the contractors that they use. Because so we have the ability to do that. We have the ability to make sure that the people who are doing this work are qualified, whether they're using in-house carpenters or whether they're going to go out and bid it. And that would be one of the things that I would want to hear about from the folks that we would interview for this job. How do you go about?
That's how we guard against it then, is in the pre-qualification process. We know that, we can decide that only these two manufacturers are qualified to do the work.
Yeah, well, with non-trade, I would say what we would have to do, because it's non-trade, is we would go ahead and we would roll back that requirement to the CM. Before we even hire a CM, I want to know who they use and their experience with that. With a non-trade contractor, you're really not pre-qualifying, but you do have the ability, there's not a pre-qualification per se for the non-trade subs. However, let's say Consigli as an example is the CM. Consigli knows that the specs call for a certain quality of work for wood window repair. They're not going to go solicit from trades that they don't feel can meet the spec and meet the quality of work, even if the spec were just for, I don't want to say just for, but for carpenters to rebuild these things, in a shop somewhere. So it's their responsibility to bring to us bids of people who've done that work and who could satisfy Phil and Stu from a quality standpoint. So this won't just be some company from, Braintree that says, oh yeah, we do wood window restoration. Yeah. Okay. Prove it. You know what I mean? And we would build that into the specs to make sure that they can illustrate that, even though we don't pre-qualify per se, but we would make it so that we would get some indication of their experience through the approval process.
And can I ask a basic question? What are the trades versus the non-trades? Are the trades the prevailing wage?
Well, so it's a good question. Everybody's prevailing wage, but the trade contractors, there's a list of, I believe it's 21 specific trades that the Commonwealth of Massachusetts calls either trade contractors under CM at risk or calls filed subbidders under design bid build. They're the same group essentially. And they include things like HVAC, plumbing, electrical, painting, carpet, tile, miscellaneous metals, masonry. It's a set list. It's basically a set list. And the big difference with them, Carolyn, is that the law protects them such that, as an example, if something isn't listed in the electrical specs section or the electrical drawings, they don't own it. You know what I mean? So there's sometimes, we have to make, so basically Phil and Stu are used to this kind of stuff, but it's basically the real common trades that you see. And, ones that have, typically, I think there's some relation to, historically maybe union work. I'm not sure on that, but it's basically this, for some reason, it's these 21 trades, but yet structural steel isn't on there. Rough carpentry isn't on there. Site work isn't on there, but roofing is, and painting is, and waterproofing is. So there's no real rhyme or reason, but what it does is it makes us have to establish kind of two different protocols. But at the end of the day, Cohasset will have a good feeling of who this pool is. We've worked with them. The CM has worked with them. And for things that are historical in nature that certain groups are going to have a real keen eye on, we want to make sure that those folks have experience doing that work so that, the town knows they're getting somebody who this isn't their first historical rehab.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Sure.
John, do we, or will we, or is there any reason for us as a committee to be part of the decisions of who gets hired and doesn't get hired?
So, good question. But for pre-qualification committees, it's by statute. So basically, member of the architect, member of the OPM, member of the architect, member of the CM, usually 2 or 3 members from the owner, one of which you would obviously make your OPM. But it would be somebody, there is a call for somebody from the owner to be on that committee, but we don't need to do that yet. We are months away from that because first we have to get we have to get the approval. We have to then select the CM. And then once the CM's on board, this is something that if we could get the bids done, you wouldn't be doing this until August. If we're not going to get bids before town meeting, we wouldn't have to worry about this until October, November. So again, plenty of time for us to go through and us to take you through what we're going to need for that.
Okay. I think in my mind anyway, we really do want to try to shoot for the fall vote on this.
Yeah, but again, until, if the Inspector General takes 60 days to get us a response and they have that ability,
yep,
that's gonna hurt us a little bit. We're going to be talking about this in July about just going out to get somebody. Even if I have the thing at the ready, it's the minimum of 4 weeks, maybe 5 weeks to get someone on board. And that's with a very aggressive, draw the line, have the interviews, get the bids, kind of boom, 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 boom. Then here we are all of a sudden. Right. And the most important thing is having them on to do the estimate. So if all we get from them is the estimate and feedback towards the end of design, that's okay. But again, if suddenly it's 30 days, okay, now it's July and, it would still be tight. I mean, you said town meeting is in early November. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's not undoable, but what we want to make sure of is we don't, especially in this kind of climate, advertise a job that's viewed as too aggressive, or someone goes, I don't have time for this. Look, they want us to do this in 2 weeks. Yep. The trade bidders, instead of 3 or 4 weeks. So we really need to nuance this with the CMs. And frankly, this is a wonderful question to ask them when we're interviewing them. Okay, guys, we have a town meeting in November 10th. What would your strategy be go to town meeting with a number or go to town meeting with your estimate and the architect's estimate? Give us your thoughts on that. And you'll get a wealth of back and forth and information. And it's that kind of current thinking that I think is super important to have our finger on the pulse of what's going on in the market at that time. Because
that makes a lot of sense. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, because as we've seen, you could have made a decision last week to do some paving. Gas went up 10% in 5 days.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it could go down 15% in the next 15 days. And that's, a lot of this stuff is unfortunately going to be kind of as we get close. And what part of what we're doing this for is to get that on the job, real live intel as another party to add to what Phil is seeing, what we're seeing, and what these guys are bidding and contracting on right now as we speak.
Okay, great. Another question for you. I know when we first started talking about a CM, it was mentioned that it's important to get them on and involved in the design. That's where they can be very effective.
Yep.
We're at 85%. Are we halting the design at this point to have them in the last 15%?
Yes, for now. Yep, I think so. And we still need to have a conversation with Phil and Stu to basically say, okay, here's why we're holding you off, guys. I mean, and they know and they heard it, but I would still want to have the discussion with them so that they, we know that they've bought off on this, and that, okay, guys, we're going to have to look to them to say, okay, how much time do you need to actually finish this, to make this happen, so that we can still have the benefit of some good feedback. So before these plans go out to, a new party or the trades, basically, they've had a chance to go through them and say, yeah, you know what, I agree. Good call making this, this change. Change this material, change this, finish schedule. We will still get the benefit of that feedback. And if it's something cost effective enough, if the thought is, okay, guys, don't rush to town meeting, because we think Johnson Roberts should really, redesign this area here. And we're going to be talking about finishes and those kind of things. We're not going to be changing how you rewire the to rewire the building. It's not that kind of set of changes, So I wouldn't worry about that. But yes, we will still get the benefit of that feedback. But some of the value is a little diminished, and that's okay because it's where we are. But the cost standpoint has a huge value to this. If I'm going to town meeting with an estimate, I want the CM's estimate. I don't want just the architect's estimate. And no ill will against any of the professional estimators. It's just, I like having as we've talked about for multiple reasons, having the bidder, having the firm that did the bid, I think is doing the bid, having their numbers is just a much better value for the town at town meeting.
John, can I interrupt for a second? Tucker is in the waiting room.
Oh.
Can you let him in?
I don't have the.
No, John has. Michelle made John the host.
Yeah.
Hang on, I got to get the waiting room. Admit. There we go.
Thank you.
Sure. I see a hand up. Oh, that was your hand, Carolyn?
Yeah, that was me. I didn't want to interrupt you, but
yeah, no worries. No worries.
Sorry.
I'm glad you did, because I'm driving.
Oh boy.
No, it's all good. It's all good. I was just at a light. I was able to safely admit Tucker.
So if I can just add some comments about the estimating.
Sure.
The estimating that, the third party or architect's estimator would do is based on unit costs, take off of the job as, a consultant, right? And they're looking at every trade under the umbrella here. Whereas when the CM goes out for putting pricing together, they are getting actual subcontractor market feedback. So they're sending the drawings and the specs out to subcontractors, and ABC Electric is actually putting a number on the job, and they're more in tune with the market. They're looking at it as a real. I don't want to overemphasize the real bid situation, but it's what they're doing. They're providing a number, and unless the drawings drastically change and the market drastically changes in the time that they first bid the documents till getting another subsequent set of documents from us, their bid would incrementally change. They wouldn't do a complete retake off. They would just true it up and look at what changed, and that would become their bid. So it's a much more confident number in what we could expect to see. Now,
the other
again,
thing too, it's a great point, Mark. The other thing too is, as an example, for Carolyn's example of the wood windows, the estimator is going to largely do, as Mark just said, kind of a square foot takeoff of historically what window renovations cost, whereas the CM may pick up the phone and call a couple of window restoration companies and say, what do you see? What do you charge? What do you think you'd be charging right now? Here, I've got these, 48 by 72 windows, blah, 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 single pane, so on and so forth. They're going to be providing more, they're not going to get quotes from electricians because, those are the trade bidders. But for some of these non-trade things, they're actually going to make phone calls, and to Mark's point, provide more of a market feedback. And again, I don't want to say that the third-party estimators don't do that also, but I would probably venture a guess that, the CM is going to do it more because, frankly, they're doing it every day. Whereas some of the estimators, some more of the estimators' data may just be jobs that he or she has estimated, and then the bids have been opened, that sort of thing.
Great. Any more questions for John?
So, John, I would say we could still use this time between, now and in the coming months here to identify the major questions that Johnson Roberts still has. I'm not so sure that, I think there's a lot of questions probably more specific to the historic part that, like the windows that we need to figure out. What do we want? We're the owner. What do we want? If this was our house, what are we telling the contractor that we want as a baseline? And then understanding what options exist and making subsequent choices there, as well as, understanding, I guess, different sorts of ranges of finishes. We're not specific on colors here.
Well, quick question. Have you, for as far as the windows go, you have not had the window conversation with Phil and Stu yet?
Not that I recall, no.
No, we have not.
Okay. All right. So
they have something plugged in, but we have not had that conversation.
So your point is very well taken. I think if there are things that you're like, okay, they say we're 85% done. We haven't heard from them yet on A through G. Put that list together and let's talk to them. And then that's 100% correct. In our upcoming meetings, we talk about those things. And to the point of, I don't want to mischaracterize. We don't stop and wait for a CM and then start having these conversations. 100% correct. What's going on with the windows, Johnson Roberts? Let's have a discussion, and John, where do you see,
to kind of do it from the other side of the coin there, wouldn't it be more effective and efficient for them to ask us put a list together of things that they need our
that they're still waiting for? Oh yeah. Sure.
Sure.
I
think for something like the windows, I mean, they've acknowledged that there's something there, but we've never really had that in-depth conversation. We've never talked about different levels of finishes. I mean, there's going to be acoustical ceiling tiles, but giving us an idea of what kind of level we're looking for. I mean, what's the difference between what you see in an IT room and what you see in a front lobby? Wood panels, that kind of, all those kinds of decisions. We haven't had any of those conversations yet.
So I guess the question I have is, and this might be a question for them, is, to use this time most effectively, and I'm just throwing this out there, rather than waiting for an estimate from them and from the CM, would it possibly make sense to revise, to refresh that estimate that we have from back in November now while we're waiting for the CM? Because again, the CM's still going to do their estimate, which was the one that we're more concerned with. Because if there are those things that we should start having discussions about windows, about finishes as they have them right now, and again, let's have the discussions, but maybe we don't wait for the other estimate, because I'm just going to throw numbers out there, okay? And again, I know these are like job killing numbers, but if you knew right now that the construction estimate was coming back, again, this is just fiction, at 20 million, why do we want to wait 3 months for the CM to be able to tell us that and then have to react? Maybe we talk about, okay, your design's at 85, let's have the discussion about the things we haven't gotten much feedback on yet. But maybe then we break it out and say, okay, where are we? So that we can start to have those discussions. I don't want to have discussions about alternative finishes and stuff if we're not there yet. You know what I mean? Seems like you guys need more info first before we can start making those decisions. So my question is do we wait for the CM to get to that point? Because as Carolyn just said, it could be August. And it feels like you guys should be getting some more data, or at least some opportunity for choices to maybe make, I don't know, so the process stays more informed. I don't know. Does that make sense?
Well, I mean, what we need is our options and the prices that go with those options, so that we can weigh the value proposition. So, there are 3 different ways to approach the windows in Old Town Hall, and we may really think that the right way is way X, but that's going to come with a significant premium, and we need to know what that premium is. Is it worth it to do it that way, or we need to start making those kinds of decisions, even in just ballpark land. We don't.
Yeah, you're making excellent points. You know what? I think before anybody does anything, before we pull a trigger on an estimate, let me go back to Phil, and I like Mark's idea. Rather than you guys telling me the things you're questioning, let's go back to them and say, okay, we know you're at 85%, but we know you haven't asked us all of the questions you need to yet, as far as alternatives. Use the windows as an example, the wood windows. What are we doing? How are we fixing them? What input do you need from this body? And frankly, then, there's the other step of what, does historical have anything to say about, what those decisions are? So there are a number of things that we certainly need to clean up, and this won't be wasted time. You know what I mean? So
and it's not dependent on the CM.
Right.
Correct. Correct. Thank you.
I think I think the budget is going to be higher than any of us really are hoping for, where it was going to land. So, if we get to a subject like the roof, the install is for all intents and purposes, the install for asphalt shingles is going to be the same no matter what brand or manufacturer we go with. We've just got to understand what level of shingle we want on the roof from an aesthetic and a performance standpoint, and understanding the ranges there. And I think that it's being able to make those kinds of decisions that we probably don't need a full estimate. We don't need to do a retake off of the concrete and all the electrical systems. We need to dig into some of those finishes, like, you know, what level of acoustical tiles, what level of carpet. There's wide ranges of carpet. What are all those? Dig into all those things that are going to tell us, you know, because I think in every subject, and we're gonna really want to look at where we can be efficient. And
yeah, almost a VE list before officially VEing.
Yeah, because we don't. I mean, it's sort of like if someone tells us it's 18 or if it's 20, it really doesn't matter at that point. We're still going to be in the same sort of mindset, I presume. But I think that's why we don't need to pay for the estimate for somebody to tell us that.
Agreed.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things that you touched on was historic. We were hoping to get back to the two historic groups in May after our town meeting, just to sit down with them and say, hey, this is a direction we're headed in. But the things that they're concerned about, which the windows we've talked about a couple of times, is going to be pretty significant in their eyes. And we don't have a clue what's going in there. If they're talking about vinyl windows and we're telling them it's going to be wood windows like what's in there now, then we're going to be totally off base. So, and it sounds like it would make much more sense for the design team to be sending us a list of questions that we would have the opportunity to make any changes on or opinion on. So,
well, and also I think there was a basis of what the estimate in November was and what that carried. Obviously, prices have gone up since then, but it would be good to understand, to Mark's point, they carried a placeholder. It's time.
We're losing you, John.
We're losing you, John.
We lost you.
He's the host. Let's hope he doesn't go anywhere.
Tell us those places. Where do you guys think? John, there are good opportunities.
John, can you hear me?
Did you lose me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. What your little fingers out the window?
Hang on one second.
We got you now.
Okay. Apologies. So I think we're on the same. I think we're on the same page. So I think the next step is to reach out to Johnson Roberts and say, okay, at the next meeting, we need to, in preparation for the next meeting, let's talk about kind of the areas where you still have questions, meaning Johnson Roberts, and those things that you might have carried a number for in November, but still aren't clear. The drawings being at 85%, that's one thing, but there are still questions in that 85. 85% to me means, okay, you've answered all of our questions and you just have work to do. You have to draw. You have to draw and do specifications. But that's not the case here. The case here is there are still things that they need input on. And in fairness to them, there's been not a lot of start-stop, but there's been, we kind of jammed the brakes on a little bit a few months ago. And I think they kind of just are they're just waiting for some feedback. So I think this is a good point to ask them the question and say, okay, listen, we want to be prepared for when the CM comes on. Like, let's talk about those things where there's, good opportunities to save. As an example, in my mind, it goes beyond this carpet or that carpet. It's type of flooring overall. You had carpet, but maybe sheet vinyl. Like, we're talking about what are significant differences in types of roofing. Again, you have some flexibility. how fancy the shingles, the asphalt shingles are, but we're going to be looking for opportunities in flooring, things that really move the needle. You know what I mean? And at this point, I don't think we have a good feel on what the systems are, what the finishes are, and I think they need to provide some input.
So, John, do you do that contacting, or do we? What do you?
Yeah. Oh no. Yeah, absolutely, okay. Absolutely. Yeah, I will circle up with them, ask them what they need. Communicate to them what you've said, or like what you'd like to hear and understand better. And I think that's given us some really good, solid content to do while we're waiting for the application to, again, hopefully we'll get that done quickly. The one, just as a quick aside while I'm thinking about it, so we are going to have to show them minutes that show that this vote that we're going to take before we leave each other tonight was taken care of. So, I hate to tell you this, but, we're going to have the vote, and then the soonest you can have another meeting, and again, it's going to be all of 2 minutes long to approve the minutes. Or do you even have to approve the minutes? Can you just write the minutes? I had this conversation with someone the other day. You have the meeting, you write the minutes. Do minutes have to be approved? Do they actually have to be approved?
They're supposed to be approved to be posted.
Okay. So all I would say is, if as soon as this, what I would suggest is, as soon as we're done with this, if you go ahead and you write the minutes, okay? You give me those minutes and I include them in the application. And if the feedback at that point is, we would like to see a certified, a clerk certified copy, I would forward that subsequently.
Okay.
I don't think we need to wait until the next time we meet, or for you guys to hold another meeting. Let's go ahead and, because we could turn something like that around. I'll have it before they ask. I submitted an application on behalf of another town 2.5 weeks ago and haven't heard boo from them. I got the email the next day that said, "Hey, thank you, we received it," but I haven't gotten any feedback. So I think we have time in order to do that. So let's, whoever is going to write the minutes for tonight, if you could just send them to me, in the next couple of days. I think that will marry up nicely with the select board, minutes that we're going to have. They're going to be in the same situation as well too, because those minutes won't be certified until they're following me either. But at least if I have the draft, I can get that from Michelle, and we can, we can submit.
Okay. Carolyn, are you taking better notes than I am?
Well, the minutes really don't have to be detailed. I can, they just need to say that we took a vote.
Correct. Yeah. State the language of the motion that says, approve the CM.
Yeah, we haven't done that yet, but yeah.
Right. That's all they need. That's all it needs to say. 100%.
Yeah.
If you do, that'd be great. Tucker, thank you for joining us. We've been discussing ins and outs of the CM, and John had forwarded some 26 pages of rules and regulations of what we had to follow to go through this procedure of hiring the CM, and one of them is voting for it, which is what we're going to do tonight. And then John just mentioned that has to be forwarded along with the application. So, John, what else do we have to do tonight?
That's it, Phil. I mean, I think the other thing was to talk about next steps, and we kind of just did that with the Johnson Roberts piece. I think we keep that moving, and all the committee needs to know is I will be starting the CM at risk request for qualifications document, and I'll be doing that in the background and showing you guys pieces of that as we kind of move forward. So that's ready to go when we finally get the yes from the Inspector General. So that's it. I mean, all we need is the vote, and that's on the minute. So we have it on the minutes, and yeah, I think we're good to go. Unless you guys have anything else you wanted to discuss tonight, and I'll run down Johnson Roberts, and we can talk about if you guys want to pick the date of the next meeting. I'll have them ready for that. Prepared to talk. For that meeting.
Okay.
John, what do you need the motion to say?
So, Carolyn, I think the way to say it would be motion to approve the construction management at risk plans and procedures as prepared by the Vertex companies for submission to the Office of the Inspector General, or as part of the application being submitted to the Office of Inspector General.
Does someone want to make that motion?
Are there any other questions first before we? Tucker, did you have any? Kind of came in here.
I have a question that's not related to this. I will ask afterwards.
We can talk about that afterwards if that's all right with you. Yeah, no, we can. Someone want to make a motion on that?
So motion to approve CM at risk plans and procedures as prepared by the Vertex companies as part of the application being submitted to the Inspector General.
Second.
Thank you. Any other questions? Gert, you want to vote on it?
Aye. Garrett Lubitz, aye.
Perfect. Mark?
Mark Cameron, aye.
Tucker?
Tucker Meehan, aye.
Carolyn?
Carolyn Coffey, aye.
And Phil Lear, aye. Unanimous vote in favor. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, guys.
Anything else we did on that, John, before we change subjects?
I just have a point of clarification that we voted on that. So I when I came in, we were talking about getting a list from the architect on issues or whatnot that we haven't yet decided upon, basically, such as the windows. Is that correct? Did I hear and understand that correct, or was there more to that I missed?
Yep. No, John's going to work on that. He's come from the other side. A couple of concerns. We just don't feel like we've had some input. And one of the concerns was the windows, which we were hoping to do a presentation to the historical societies or to historical groups, and we don't really know what's going in there for windows, so we can't talk intelligently to that point. But there's a lot of other, like floor surfaces and roof material and so forth that we mentioned that we could hopefully have some input on. That might affect the outcome or the price too. So, yep.
So that would be something we could give input on, right, Phil? Is that what you're saying?
Correct. Yes,
okay.
It's for this committee's discussion. Yep. Cool.
I have a few other questions. Can I ask those, or should I wait for a later time? Okay. Yeah. My next question, and I don't know if this has been addressed yet, but I had it brought up to me recently again, and I've noticed I still think we're very behind on getting some of our minutes up. Have we had any progress on that, Phil? Do you know?
I asked at the last meeting. I think there's a couple of us that are working on them, but I don't think we didn't have anything to approve tonight, but I'm guessing in the next couple of weeks we should have some more.
Okay, so this has been discussed. All right, just making sure, because I've noticed we haven't posted any.
Thank you.
This year yet. Okay, and then my last question is something that I'm just sort of unclear on overall. So when we are talking about the overall budget for the project, I know that there's a lot of things up in the air that are unclear, but it seems as though, are we waiting on the select board and the advisory boards, or something, at least the select board, to give us some form of direction on the funding of this project. I mean, it's never really, as far as I can tell from our like charter, been our task to do that, but it seems like we are being held responsible to do that at the town meetings, right? Like that, there's a lot of questions about that, and I understand the concerns, but do we have something open with the select board we know is coming to us, or do you know, Phil?
I'm not sure what you're asking. They have supported us going into the town meeting, and that continues, that support.
No, I know that the select board supports us, but I don't know. I don't know like how in the end we're supposed to get this funding number. Are we fully coming up with it, or and giving it to them and they're figuring out where the capital comes from? Is that how this works? Like we have to say like this is how much it's going to cost, and all they're doing is figuring out where they get that money?
Pretty much. We're coming up with a design. The design has a cost. We are going to present that cost, and then there are 4 parties in town government that have to figure out how they're going to pay for it. That's the finance director, that's the town manager, capital budget, and the select board.
Right.
So
living in the, I truly don't know, but living in the like inflationary times we live in right now, and Mark, you are probably the person that can best answer this, but do we think that we can actually get a number that it's like we know that this is the number, or do we think that we're only going to be able to get a number that it's like this is what the number looks like today? It could change by X percentage. What is
it's going to change?
What is the goal?
It'll change, but you'll get pretty darn close, and it's really whatever happens in the economy. I mean, people aren't going to say the number is valid for, a great length of time while we decide what we're going to do, and then be subjected to risk on their side. So, but I think we just got to play that scenario out. I don't think there's any way to completely take that off the table. There's no.
Yeah, no, and it's a great question, Tucker. But I think what's important to know is that, this idea of going to a town meeting, let's say we don't have bids in hand. Bids in hand is obviously the best case, because you've got bids, they're agreeing to hold them for a period of time. You go to town meeting and you say, here's our construction costs and here's the rest of the budget. Well, the reality is that if you're building, most building projects these days, big ones are either schools or libraries, where there's extra funding from the state. All of those projects go to town meeting years before the documents are ready to go to construction. So the fact that there is inflation, even if we can't go to the fall town meeting with the actual ask, to Mark's point, we're going to be close enough and have contingencies built in there to say, but again, not wild contingencies, because if you just, sure, we could put $5 million on top of this and also be really comfortable that, sure, we'll be able to cover it and no one will vote for the job because the price will be too high. So it's finding that balance between a real number, a hard bid number, but you're trying to work it into a schedule of a town meeting that is very rigid. You have to have it by this certain time in November. Otherwise, we're waiting until, April or May of next year. And then we've encountered a whole year of escalation. So I think we play this out. You get the CM on board. We plan for an estimate. And if we can pull off a bid, that's great. In either scenario, we're going to have to go, probably around September. If the CM gets on in August, we'll have an estimate in September. Even if we're still trying to get bids, we wouldn't have the bids. The bids would be ready so close to town meeting. We will have had to prepare the town and the FinCom and advisory, all those folks beforehand. So we're going to be doing that with an estimate, no matter what. Perfect world, you prepare them with an estimate, and by the time we get to town meeting, we say, guess what, guys? We know that this is the budget. Well, how do you know? Because we've got bids in hand. That's the perfect world. But if we can't do that, we're still we're gonna go back to that estimate, but we're doing an estimate, unlike the school projects.
Oh no.
No, we didn't lose him.
Did he go away?
He did.
I just got something saying that I'm the
You're the host, Carolyn. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Carolyn, great party.
El Presidente.
How did that happen? Darn, because I really wanted to ask you. I think we were served to figure out a way to update our estimate of what it would cost to renovate the existing building, because I think that a significant part of our rationale behind the project is going to be even though it's going to be more expensive, we have to invest in the building. We need to update our estimate of what it would cost just to renovate, including all the soft costs and the site work and all that stuff that would be needed. And then what it would cost to do our project, so that we can look at the delta, because it's really the delta that people are going to be voting on.
I think a chart, right? You know,
exactly.
renovation, full project, which, you know, or full renovation and then part reno rebuild, because that's really what we're doing. We're still renovating.
Yes.
So,
and people need to understand that they're voting on the difference between the two on the giant project. It's not a 0 to
correct
18 million.
But we take it all the way down, even show the contingency, you know, like just all the way down and not all the soft costs, but the soft costs associated with relocating for a year plus is all going to be the same. It is what it is.
So I think, we got to figure out how to do that. And I don't know the best way to do that. And I'm happy to start having some conversations with Don, if you guys are good with that, to start kind of processing that sort of information so that
who's Don?
Don Pyatt, the finance director.
Excuse me.
For town.
Yeah, that sounds great. So before Carolyn, you worked on it with Jason, is that?
Brian, yes, Jason Federico.
Right.
They actually got, after the, in 2018, they got contractors to come in and actually, give estimates of what it would cost to do all that stuff. But that was in 2018. Jason, the engineering department did. I almost feel like, we should talk to Brian Joyce or somebody and ask them to do that again.
That'd be great if you could have a conversation with Don and maybe on the side, give us some advice on how to move forward so that it's an accurate estimate. That'd be great.
One other thing that came to mind too, and I don't know if this is us as a committee or someone from Chris's office reaches out to maybe Chief Quigley on any specific security measures that we need to be cognizant of when putting the building together. One item that we kind of loosely talked about was the transaction windows in the lobby. What they need from a COVID perspective, what they, and with that said, there's a security side of it. It would just be good to have that in the documents, whatever it is, because it would end up costing us more in the end if we have to change it from having a rather loose security setup to a robust bulletproof like transaction window. It's better to just have it in now because it'll cost more as a change. So things like that. I'll keep thinking of things, but there's all kinds of stuff like that any of these, making sure that we talk to the people that on the IT side that they don't throw us a curveball about what they need.
Mark, on that note, do you think should we have someone like temperature check the historical people on how important the windows are to them?
Well, I think for that subject, I think it's best for us to get a little information and arm ourselves so that we know, and then check in with them and kind of go through our options: cost, energy efficiency.
Yeah.
And again, what the aesthetics? What is it going to look like? You know, is it going to be all new, but it replicate and do and mimic what was there? And so from 20 feet away, you can't tell. Or are we trying to restore exactly what's there, single pane, and have the benefit of the historical side, but maybe lose it on the energy efficiency side? So I think we got to arm ourselves with that data before we talk to them.
Okay. Are you finished, Mark? I had one more thing.
Yes. No, I'm good.
Okay. Phil, just sorry to jump around on you, but to jump back to what I was initially asking about, if we were waiting for anything from the select board, advisory board, whatever, boards. The reason that came to mind is that I was at dinner the other night, and I got seated next to Mr. And Mrs. Dormitzer, and he started to kind of ask me about it. If we were waiting on something from them, or if they needed something. And I was talking to him about it. And so that's just where that interest was. That's what got me thinking about it, is I didn't know if there was something that was unresolved there that I wasn't quite aware of, but they were at least curious about it, about, what we needed to get numbers together. And I wasn't really trying to get into it at that time at trying to eat dinner, but that was what initially got me thinking about it.
No, that's a really fair question. When we got the latest numbers just prior to the town meeting, I think this committee was extremely disappointed, nervous, whatever, that they had gone up so much, and concerned about our support. So our decision is to get our CM on board, which we got the vote. Now we can proceed with that. But we do have an obligation to inform the different boards what that number is currently.
Right.
But I think we've got some work to do, right? I mean,
what I would, and guys, I apologize for falling off there. My phone died, and then I had no way to get back on and let any of you know. So I think the important thing here, though, is I would recommend, don't put another number out there yet if we're going to get ready to give another number with the CM.
Yep. We
can talk about what the number was, and we all know that there's inflation. My concern is you had a number, now there's another number. Oh, let's give them an interim number, and then we're going to give them the real number in November, but it might not be the real number because we don't have bids yet. So, costs are going up. The committee is doing their best to hedge that by hiring a CM. The town made the right decision in doing that. Listen, we have a ballpark number of where this project is. And if somebody wants to start running numbers on a $16 million project total, like wherever we think it may land at 17, whatever the number is, people can start, people don't have to wait to try to figure out the impact to the average homeowner at 16 million, 17 million, 18 million. Like that can be done. Absolutely.
We
talked
about that when you fell off, John. We're on board with that. We talked about that when you fell off.
No, that's great. That's great. But getting too specific about what the number is, I think that's bad right now. Not because we're trying to hide it, but because it's in such flux. We know it's going to be expensive.
So, the key was making sure that we also update our estimate to just renovate the existing building, because the investment in the building needs to happen. And it's a question of what kind of investment, and what the town's going to vote needs to understand is it's voting on the delta between the two, not on 0 to 16, 17, 18, whatever big projects this turns out to be. So,
sure, but as long as the committee
understands. Yeah, but we had but that's our job, is to educate people and make sure that they understand that. And we had an estimate prepared back in 2018. But we talked about this when you fell off, and we just need to make sure that that is as accurate as it can be, so that when we're presenting, people understand,
Yeah. Okay. And because right. And I think that's very fair, as long as folks understand, and meaning the public understands, that this isn't a situation where we are doing two designs, one of a reno only, of both.
No.
But we can update the costs of, we can update that work list for sure, and make sure that that is brought current, to your point, that so that they understand that, okay, if you don't do this, you're at least going to have to do this, that's a very good point. And we can certainly make sure that we have that, and we'll have that from the CM as well, which will be fabulous.
We'll have what? We'll have them price that number too. Again, they won't have plans and specs, but we'll also have, let's face it. So Phil is going to give you a number with his estimator based on the plans that he has. Okay. And then we're going to go ahead and try to get a number from the CM, who will have had a chance to get into the building and have that same work list and say, okay, if we don't do anything, here's what we see that number to be. Wouldn't surprise me if the CM's number is more accurate, because they are actually in the building and have had a chance to see it, whereas the Phil's estimator has not. So we've done that reno number ourselves. Are you offering or saying that we should wait for somebody else to do that number for us?
No, I think we update it, Phil, but I think when we have the CM, we take advantage of the fact that we have them and have them put their eyes on it too, because we may be not being conservative enough. You know what I mean? Let's get the builder's opinion of what they think as well. I think it's more data. So sure. Yes, do what you're saying, but let's not just rely on, quote, our list. Let's give it to them and say, hey, this is our list. What do you guys see? They may see a piece of this that all of us have been like, oh yeah, we've been checking off the dots here, but we might be forgetting something that could add, 10, 15, 20% to that number for whatever reason. And I don't have the specific answer to that, but we should plan for it,
Sounds great. I got to scoot out. Is there anything else you need from me?
No, I think we're good. Again, I apologize for dropping off. I know what I need to do with Phil and Johnson Roberts, and I'll get going with them tomorrow morning.
Sounds great. Anybody else have any other questions?
Should we set up a meeting to approve these minutes?
I think it'd be smart. I can send a note to Michelle.
What day is today? Today is Monday.
Today's Monday. We can do.
And none of us have to go to the meeting tomorrow? I mean, I can maybe tune in.
Correct.
Oh, good.
I don't believe so. Correct.
But we've had them on Tuesday before. Should we do the 10th?
That's tomorrow.
No, the 17th, excuse me.
I mean, do you want to wait that long? I mean, it's going to be a 2-minute meeting to approve minutes, unless you want to build a real meeting around it.
No, we don't. No.
I can do this tomorrow and get them out, and we can post tomorrow for a Thursday meeting.
Perfect.
Just so you know, I cannot be there on Thursday. This is my last class, so I'll be done and I'll be free on Thursdays, but I cannot be there on this Thursday if you're counting on my attendance.
Right.
But I mean, we could, if it's a 2-minute meeting, we could do it almost any time. Yeah.
You want to, does it work for Mark and Gert? Thursday?
Yeah. If it's literally, 2 to 5 minutes, I could find time to do that.
I have a class that night. that starts at 7. So if we can do it at 6:45 or something, that'd be great.
Yeah, even earlier would be better for me. I've got another
event that evening too. Get it?
Okay.
Do it at 6 and be done by 6:20.
6 o'clock.
Yeah.
Sure.
Does that work?
Okay. Does that work for you, John, for us to turn it around like that?
I think that works great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Great.
Okay. So Thursday, January 12th. Phil, you'll communicate with Michelle to make sure that gets posted in time?
Sure. I'll take care of that.
Okay.
All right, I think we're good.
Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you very much. Take care.
Thanks, everybody.
Good night, everyone.
Good luck, Tucker.
Thank you.